welcome back to the Mousetrap, your weekly source for news around the world on models and reviews and tools and things that have recently hit the market. Sorry I've been away a little bit. I've had to move, so I missed a bunch of weeks of updates. So I'm back to it. So hopefully you guys haven't disappeared on me. So we'll find out what's new around the world. Let's get to the blotter here and see what we got. Looks like there's still more on the Panther war of models. Tons and tons of Panthers still coming. Tacom, Mang, Ryfield, they're all doing A's and G's and all kinds of different versions of the Panther, and they keep trying to re-up each other on different details and so forth. The one thing that is actually coming out is Tacom is actually coming out with a Panther anti-aircraft, which was built at the end of the war as a prototype. I'm not sure if it was ever used. I don't think it was, but they're doing a model of the one mock-up that there are photos of. So that'll be kind of an interesting version of that. Berg Panthers and all kinds of things like that coming as well. So A's, D's, and G's, versions with, without Zimmerit, things like that. So it's still going. Looks like the problems with the company Hobbyco, their website, which was the retail side, which was Great Plains, is actually their website is actually still being run by their new company, which is Horizon Hobbies. So I guess they just took it over as it is. I have not ordered anything from it recently, so I'm not sure whether the service has gone up or down, but that's the news on that one. So they're picking up the sticks on that one, and hopefully they're not ignoring the plastic guys and just sticking with RC. So couple new things coming down the pike. When I was at the Nationals this year, which was in Phoenix a few weeks ago, there were a few new release ideas. Unfortunately, there were a lot of companies that weren't there. Tamiya was not there, and a few others weren't there, so it was kind of disappointing. Kinetic was there, and they were showing off some of their new kits and so forth that they were coming out with, which was kind of nice. I don't know why a lot of the companies did not show up. They were supposed to and had tables, but they didn't show up. I don't know if they were worried about the heat or economy or what was going on, but a lot of places sure were missed. So, but some of the other information that we found out is Tamiya is doing the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force Type 16 wheeled vehicle with a turret. It looks kind of like a Boxer with a turret. You should be able to see the picture by now, and that's looking real good. It looks like a real simple kit. There's some kits out there they sent as test shots to different people to build on YouTube, so check those out. It looks like it's a simple build, but a really nice build. Other things coming out, Trumpeter has a CAD drawing of a Type P40 long-range tracking vehicle, I guess you could call it, big radar vehicle. There has been resin kits of this before, but this will be the first injected. Looks very complicated. There was one actually at the show built up of the resin one with a big photo etch radar system on it, and I'm telling you, it's going to have a lot of parts in that kit. And Trumpeter's got a challenge for him, and it will probably be pretty pricey. So, but it'll be a welcome kit for sure. So thank you to Trumpeter for designing that one and planning to come out with that one. Not sure a date on that one. The Mang Buck rocket launching mobile system. There's two companies doing that one. There's actually Mang and Panda. The Mang one probably will arrive first because they've already had their box art out. This one's controversial because it is the same vehicle that shot down the Malaysian airliner over the Ukraine, and which happens in war sometimes, but the big problem was that Russia actually tried to cover it up. and that was the big problem. So unfortunately, it's a very nice looking vehicle. It's a very powerful vehicle. It looks like it's going to be a really good kit. If you do have a problem with it being in Russian markings, there are ones that were in other countries' markings, so check some of those out. Some of the, I believe it was the Netherlands, Finland had one. So if you like to build that and just don't want to do it in Russian markings, there are options. The Tacom is coming out with another T55, a late one, mod 60, I'd say 65, something like that, with interior. It's going to be really nice. Packed. Those boxes are packed. They are probably a good 7 pounds almost of plastic in one box. So that'll be coming down the pike here pretty soon. They got the box art and everything for that. Plus most of it was already done, so it should be a pretty quick release. On aircraft announcements, there is a Kitty Hawk has CAD drawings out of 1/32 scale Mirage 2000s. They want to do a single seat, and then also they want to do a double seat. The CAD drawings look pretty good. This will be a very welcome kit as long as they get some of their fit systems right and clean up some of their problems they've had with their recent kits. Speaking of which, they have come out with the F5E. I have looked at that kit. I'll probably do a review of it, but it looks good, but there are some really weird things going on with it. For example, when I test fitted the fuselage, the front fuselage, and for the rear one too, the panel lines would actually, that go over the back, would line up, and then the next one would not line up, and then the next one would line up, and so then they're off by a couple millimeters. So they need to pay attention to that, because that is pretty aggravating, because that's going to be extremely hard to fix. Also, they have parts that narrow and get real thin because they want to show open panels, so they're trying to do it to scale, which is honorable, but sometimes they made the plastic really thin, and you try to put the two thin pieces together and they just, I mean, there's nothing to glue. So there's going to be some modelers have to do some reinforcing. So there's a little few things they need to work on, but overall I think they're getting there. Nice looking kit. So again, I'll have a review of that soon. But they are coming out with an F5F, which is going to be the double seat. They have announced that, and they have artwork for that. The one I'm most excited about is they're going to do an F5E, or sorry, RF5E Recon version, which has the big camera in the nose, and that's going to be really sharp if they get that one right, and that'll be definitely one worth having. Let's see what else we got on the blotter here. Tacom has announced they're going to do a M1070 flatbed vehicle with a D9 tractor on it. 35th scale. It's going to be huge. I don't know how expensive it's going to be. Hopefully they'll be pretty reasonable. It's going to have a lot of parts. Looking at the Mang D9, it's going to be that size there, plus about what the Het tractor and trailer is. So they announced that. Let's see what else we got here, and that's about it. The IPMS Nats that went on, again, was in Phoenix. Next year it's going to be in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Looks to be a pretty good show. I'm not sure if I'll make that one. And then the one after that is going to be in Texas. They won the bid. Not sure exactly where in Texas. I thought it was about mid area in Texas. I'll have to check on that. So the show was pretty decent. They had a real problem with the registration. When I went there to register, I waited 2.5 hours in line, finally gave up, and went into the show by buying a general admission ticket, which was $10, because I was going to miss the show. And if I did wait in line completely, I would have missed the first day of the show completely, which is not a good thing. You know, you're paying a lot of money for the 4 days, and you want to get in the dealer's room specifically for certain items that are going to sell out quickly. So you want to be there first, or, you know, be able to get the good stuff first. And that was very aggravating. So they needed to work on that, and they needed to figure out what they messed up on that, because, you know, most registrations take a while, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half at tops. But when I came back out of the dealer's room at 6 o'clock when they closed, there was still a line, and I would have still been in line. So I would have waited from a little after 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in line and still not have been finished. So yeah, I was really aggravated about that. But otherwise, it was a good show. They just need to work on things like that. So that is about it on that end. The other news is the Hobbytown Corporation has paired with Radio Shacks, which I know a lot of you are, like me, are very sad that the Radio Shacks went out. But they are actually having small sections in their stores of Radio Shack items, so you'll be able to get battery holders and hopefully LEDs and things that people need for doing modeling. So that'll be kind of neat. They have already showed up in some of the hobby towns, so check them out. I guess the Great Plains website is called Tower Hobbies. It was their retail site, so disregard the Great Plains. It's called Tower. Another company which was at the Nationals is a company called Kit Links, and they are actually a previous company called Great Models, I believe is where they came from, and they're starting back up, and they had quite a few models there, including a giant stack of the Revell 32nd scale P51s, so for 25 bucks a piece, so that wasn't too bad at all. Good start for them. Mobius has announced that they're going to do a 2001 Space EVA pod, very large scale, 1/20th, I believe, something like that, or 1/12th. I mean, it's huge. You'll see the picture of it. It's about going to be, I would say, probably about the size of a grapefruit. So I'm not sure what the price will be. It will have an interior, of course, might or might not come with lighting kits, but if it doesn't, sure, everybody's going to do lighting kits for it. So that's a good one coming out to look forward to. Haven't heard a release date on that one, unfortunately, either. And haven't heard much about the Klingon 350 scale Klingon Katinga class ship. They had no information on it at the Nationals, which was really sad, because if it's coming out soon, that would have been a prime place to promote it. So anyways, that is about it for news around the world. So thanks for joining me again. Sorry for the delay, and I'll be keeping updates going. So stay tuned for the kit review. Okay, for this week's kit review, we are going to be reviewing the Mini Art brand new release of the 1.5 ton railroad truck. And I used to assume that that just meant the AA on there meant that it was an anti-aircraft, but apparently when it comes to trucks, that means the axles. So if it's an AA, it's axle, dual axle. If it's a AAA, then it's axle with dual axles in the back, is what I assume from looking at the truck designations. So this one is a current release. They have done this truck before. This is the first time they've done it on railroad wheels, and it looks like a really interesting way to build this truck. So let's take a look at it. We've got 1/35th scale Mini Art kit number 35265. The side of the box doesn't have much. This side actually has some of the color schemes, and you can do a high or low bed walls on the truck, which is actually very interesting. So give you a few options there. So let's take a look and see what's in the box. Okay. This is another kit that I bought at the same time. It's their cable spools, so I'll review that at a different time. So we've got the instructions, which are, as usual, very clear for Mini Art. They do a very good job. They have one of the, or two of the color schemes here. And parts layout, very clear on how they do their parts layout, which is nice since there's so many parts to these kits and so many small parts. It's nice that they make it clear and fairly easy to understand. They do have color callouts as you build, so which is interesting. instead of having it just at the end. Tell you what color the chassis and so forth is. Looks like I'll have to make sure I get the chassis square, otherwise things will start to not fit. As with any truck model, you want to make sure your frame is square. Okay. Looks like they got a few pieces of glass work, most of the engine detail. You can do the engine hood doors open or closed, which is very interesting. And doors open or closed. And then they show you the different options for the height of the back bed. They also give you options for low lights for hiding from aircraft and things like that, and putting the bed on and so forth. And then a few more of the paint schemes there, and then the color callouts. They give you Vallejo, Mr. Color, Life Color, Tamiya, Testors, AK, Real Colors. They give you Humbrol, Revell, Mission models, which is interesting. They just came out. And then give you the names in English and Russian, since this is a Russian company. Does give you the track, looks like a good size piece of it there, and a couple more options on the back here. Now they do suggest that if you buy more track, you do need to buy the Russian gauge track, since this is a Russian vehicle, even though some of the markings are captured ones that were German. Russian gauge and German gauge were different sizes. So let's take a look at the kit. We've got the photo etched here. And that looks pretty decent. It's got the little light covers there and a few little pieces there. Some extremely tiny. I don't know if they're going to be workable or not. Nice that they always put them in an envelope so they don't get bent or screwed up. All right, now I did take this out of the bag. The one thing that Mini Art does, for better or worse, they put everything in usually one bag and then just clamp it down tight so nothing moves, which is nice for the small parts and so forth, but it still would be nice to have separate, at least a couple bags sometimes. Okay, so the first sprue here, take this and move this off to the side. Okay, first sprue has some of the seat and cushion pieces, which is really nice that they actually texture them really well. Looks like they've slide molded some of the parts, some of the transmission parts, so you don't have two pieces on everything. Real crisp, a lot of teeny tiny parts, so I'm gonna have to be very careful about that. It doesn't look like they give you very many extras, and it's got a little tiny engine too. The vehicle was not very large and was kind of just a cheapy type vehicle. Next parts is the track. They give you 4 pieces. Gives you the rails and the ties, and those look really good. They have released those before, of course, as the European and Russian style track. Those off to the side. Take a look at some of the frame. Detailed on both sides, which is really nice. Not a lot of knockout pin marks. They usually use them on their actual sprue gates, which is much better than actually having them on the part itself. They look like they try to avoid that at all costs there, which is appreciated by the modeler. Okay, got the fenders here, which look like they're going to need a little cleanup. I mean, even though the real ones are kind of dented, these are actually, looks like they didn't get enough spray of mold release in the mold, and they kind of tore the skin of the plastic. Anyways, just a little sandpaper there. Hood and some of the cab parts. Here is the back bed. Real good texturing on the wood. So if you don't want to do any type of wood simulation paint techniques, you can actually just paint it, maybe give it a wash, and you're done, since it has all that grain texture in it. Looks like a couple of the tall side plates. These are the low side plates here, and these are the tall ones here, about twice the height. Again, double detail on either side, which is really nice. No knockout pin marks. There's the front and back there. which you can put down the rear bed, mount it so the rear door is open. There's the actual doors. There have some fabric texture on the inside, which is kind of nice. More little tiny parts. Does have the headlamp, which is slide molded, so it's hollow, which is nice. Another one of the same thing, and then the wheels. Got the train wheels, or the rail wheels, whatever you want to call them. A couple of those. Some leaf springs, very detailed. And some more leaf springs there. And then is the clear parts, which has the windshield, the side doors, and the headlights, which look really nice. The scribing in those looks really, really nice. And that is it for the parts. This on the other side here gives you the decals. You can see they're Deutsche Reichsbahn and some of the Russian ones there. So that's looking real good. So looks like a good kit. Give you some of the close-ups here in a bit, and beyond that, I'm really excited to start this kit. Not much I can say about the molding, just that it's exquisite. They used slide molding in good use on the leaf springs and everything, top, bottom, sides. So you get that detail and don't have to worry about building it yourself. Little tiny parts, that's the only thing I got to be very, very careful of. Some of it I might have to replace, like this piece here, with just real wire, since it's got so many of the little punch out pin marks or pin pieces that will leave a divot, and I may not even be able to get those off without breaking the part. So looks good. Since I got a few minutes, let me go through with the cable spools, the Mini Art cable spools, number 35583. And on the back they give you all the different paint jobs. They do give you decals for these markings, you just have to paint it. They're really good at doing all kinds of little pieces, parts. Anyways, you get 3 of each small and 3 of the large ones, and then these are the cross members here. You can roll stuff up on them or just leave them as empty spools, and I'm going to put those two together and make a decent display out of it. Then they give you, there's the big old decal sheet for them, which is really nice. And there's the assembly instructions. Color callouts again with everybody's brand, which is really cool that they give you everybody and all the current brands. So that's all there is to the cable spools. So I'm gonna probably get to working on this one pretty quick, and because I'm pretty excited about it, and see how some of these Mini Art trucks go together. So stay tuned for the kit rewind. Okay, it's time for the kit rewind, where I take a kit from many moons ago and take a look at it and see what they were doing back then and what we were working on for us older folks, and kind of highlight the golden age of models. This week I've got the Spruce Goose, which is Howard Hughes's giant airplane from years ago. And this is actually the release that was available at the Spruce Goose Museum, which was in north of Los Angeles there in Newport Beach. And I got to go there and see it in its giant dome. And they were selling this kit there, which was actually an old, I believe it was an Entex kit, but don't quote me on that. 200 scale, 19-inch wingspan, even 200 scale, from Rather Port Properties, which I guess was the guys who actually had the museum and all. This airplane is now up in Seattle. Unfortunately, they cut the sides open so you can actually see in it without going in it. When I was there, they actually allowed us to go in it and up, even into the wing, which you could actually walk out, and they had it blocked off slightly, but you could actually walk into the wing, and it was could fit a 6-foot person walking in that wing, which was pretty amazing. and then you can see down the back cargo area and so forth. But yeah, it's a monster. It's just quite stunning of an airplane. They also repainted it. I guess it was aluminum, and now it's like a white or something. Anyways, you can still go and see it. It has quite a history to it. So anyways, this one looks like I actually picked up in 1984. So that's 34 years ago. Not as old as some of the other kits I showed on here, but pretty old. Price $9.95, yeah. They actually remarket this particular kit from Minicraft. And they even had TWA fictitious markings for it, which was kind of interesting, but it's about $40 now. Anyways, talks a little bit about the history of the aircraft and so forth on the sides. Let's take a look and see what we were building back then. Okay. Looks like they did have scribing on this kit, which was kind of nice for the time. It's when they first started realizing that people wanted scribe models, but they're very deep scribes. I mean, for this scale, yeah, that would be like a gutter. But little teeny tiny propellers, which I think the blades might be a little out of scale, but they were just there. The little tiny engines there. If you think about it, those engines are big enough to be almost a B-29 engine, but in 200 scale they're pretty tiny. Looks like the wings, real basic, real basic, just a little bit of scribing and stuff on it, ailerons on it, and yeah, it's real simple design there. The other wing. So together this thing is actually going to be a pretty impressive sized model, even though it's small scale. And this is the fuselage here, and yeah, it's actually, for the times, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it builds up to be a pretty decent kit. Not a lot of warpage or anything on it. It'd be cool if it had an interior, but that's asking a little too much. And then this is the decals. That's interesting what these decals are. Can't tell you what exactly, why they're almost in a Cyrillic or a backwards print. Let's take a look at the box. Yeah, they're backwards, which is interesting. Apparently you put them on, so hard to read the little tiny writing on them. It says how to use decal: wet back of decal after half a minute, slide into position and press down flat. Well, that's retarded because it's backwards. Huh. I never even noticed that. Don't know what to do with those. All right, and then a little clear stand, which is kind of cool. Might use that for that or something else. And the instructions, again, a lot of history. That's the way they used to do these before about 95 is when they started just not caring about the history, and they just had you build a model. But I really wish they would get back to that, where they would have the history on the first page of the real thing. And parts layout, pretty simple. Not great material paper, so it's gonna have to be protected if I wanted it to last any more years. They tell you to put a big old weight on there, which it does not come with. It says use an old battery or clay. And I can imagine if I built this in 1984 and I put an old battery in there, the whole front end would be gone from the acid spilling out and coming off of the battery and corroding. It would be a real big mess. So, and then they say thank you for visiting the Rather Port properties. They obviously knew that you were there when you were seeing the real thing when you bought this model. You even have the cost on the instruction sheet. how to order other ones, which is really interesting. And then you're supposed to fill in your own California sales tax, I guess. Okay, that's interesting as well. You have no idea. I guess you have to check and see what the California sales tax is, and then what the shipping is. Oh, here we go. Residents only 6.5%, and then shipping is $3.50. So you got to do your own math there. And anyways, very interesting. The fact that it was actually marketed completely from a properties company that had the museum, and that just cracks me up. So anyways, that is the Kit Rewind. Hope you enjoyed it. And next up is new gear. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of New Gear. Today I'm going to be working with a new piece of gear made by a company called Despiae. I'm guessing that's how they say it. D-S-P-I-A-E. Craft Tools out of Hong Kong. And I have reviewed before their cutters, which were awesome. So got this little guy, and what this is, it's a circle cutter, but it's not just any ordinary circle cutter. It's a heavy duty, fancy circle cutter here. So basically it shows on the box what it looks like. A little bit of ID code. Box is real sturdy, nice to keep it in. They really went all out on the box. So then with a thank you, little whatever you want to call it here. Basically it holds the parts to the assembly of this thing, and has a drawing of what they are. It's just really cool. And then a little place to put them all. It does have 3 cutter heads, an Allen wrench to put the tool together with, a screwdriver, another Allen wrench. So always appreciates them thanking the buying public, and on the back has a little bit of operation and so forth. It does have a set of instructions which I took out and promptly buried in my model room here, so sorry about that, but they talk about how to assemble it and so forth. So what it looks like, let's take it out of the package. It's packed in a foam box, which keeps it nice and safe, since this thing is a real precision tool. So, and basically it is an aluminum block and a giant bearing that this slides around on to do the circular cutting. Which is nice about that is that it has a rubber grip on the bottom as well. Nice and sturdy, won't move around once it's in place. That way your circle will not wander. A lot of times people don't think that they don't take much time doing circle cutters. They just use a template and a knife, and they wonder why it wanders off and so on and so forth. So this is a precision tool. It's also made to make roundels and concentric circles, which is really nice. That's really what I bought it for. You can tighten it up when you build it with the Allen wrenches, depending on how tight you want this to rotate. Some people might want it a little firmer than others. So that's what they do that for. So basically what they have, these are the little cutter heads, little teeny tiny things, and there's different angles for different types of plastic and different depths. This is the blue one, which has about I think a 45-degree angle on it. Anyways, it goes in this little hole on the bottom, but what a lot of people don't realize, because they didn't put it in the instructions, is there's a little magnet that actually goes in this spring-loaded driver here, and that magnet, they don't tell you where to put it, but you put it in here. That way the actual blade does not fall out every time you lift it up, so just enough to hold that blade in there, which is kind of nice. Spring-loaded nut here, so you can actually put the tension down, so if you start cutting and it stops, basically goes to the depth that it's supposed to and won't cut any further. You can tighten it down a little bit and it'll go a little further. If you've ever used a pipe cutter, it's the same idea. You tighten it, cut, tighten it, cut. This is just the little handle here, screws on. This is the nut that loosens basically this whole mechanism, so you can move this up and down, and that will give you your radius of your, or diameter of your cut. I did notice that when you measure things to cut, this is actually a diameter setting marks on the side. So if you're going to use a caliper like this, measure out what basically size of the circle is, you put it on here, you still have to divide it in half because this does not match this. Now what you can do is say it is at, say, 50 or close to 50, half-inch diameter. You just go to 1/4 inch. You can actually go down to 1/4 inch, which is 25 on your micrometer, and then you can actually measure from 0 point and see where you need to actually put that arrow so you get the correct cut. It's kind of touchy. I wish there was some type of a gimbal on here that would make it so you could get super accurate measurements, but since they're so tiny movements and they're radiuses, each little movement makes a big difference, so you just got to be very careful about how you set it. So let's get started on what it does. I've already done a few circles on here. The biggest thing that most people are going to use it for is for cutting tape, for masking of wheels and so forth. So what you're going to have to do is get your tape. I usually like using Tamiya tape, and the wider the better. If you're not sure if it's going to be wide enough, you can double it up like so. Just make sure that this piece of tape is stuck to this one pretty good, so run your fingernail along there. So now, I'm going to, let's say I want, about a 1/4 inch. So I do 1/8 inch actual marking on there, which is actually, this is actually metric, but that's a pretty good close assumption. Okay. So tighten the knurled nut down, and then this will spin here. To measure where you want the cut to start, what you do, a lot of people have gauges and so forth, so they know where they're cutting, but it's pretty simple. If you want to know where your circle is going to be, so you don't cut off the tape, you actually make this at a right angle to here, and that's the bottom of your circle. That's where it bottoms out. So then that you can put at the bottom of the piece of tape. Don't really have to hold it down, just maybe hold it from moving, and then gently turn it and let it cut, and let it do its thing, and it'll cut through. If it doesn't seem to be cutting through enough, tighten the nut and you'll feel the drag of the cutter. Usually 3 times around is enough. So lift that off, and now we're going to take a look at what we got. I intentionally did it small to show you how small this thing can do it. It can do it really, really tiny. Get it here with a knife. Okay, so absolutely super clean cut. The bigger the better, of course. Now, if I wanted to do concentric circles, I'll show you how to do that. That way the blade doesn't wander on the scribe that's in the plastic. Now, you can also scribe plastic with this and pop it out to make perfect circles. So set it down, loosen it a little bit this time. Let it cut its way, give it a little more. Okay, now that I've got that circle cut without moving anything, I'm going to loosen this nut. I'm going to lift up on the blade so it gives it a little bit of relief, and move the cutter over. Okay, reset it down, tighten it back up. Just make sure that this block has not changed. Go around again. Okay, see what we got. If you can kind of see it here, it's just, my camera might not be picking that up. But again, you can do an inner or outer circle for masking. Of course, this one again, like I said, you need to make sure the tape is sticking to itself. So there's your inner. There's the outer. Makes a perfect, absolutely perfect roundel. And you can use that for masking, or actually cut decals that way, or decal film. You can cut plastic that way, just it's a little harsher to do this on plastic, and you have to usually it doesn't cut through plastic. It's enough to score it and then you can pop it out. So anyways, that was a very handy tool. I already used it a bunch on different things, masking things off. I even cut a piece of plastic for the end of a tube, this here. So what I did was I measured it and I cut the plastic. This was a piece of pipe. Cut the plastic, didn't go all the way through, but it was enough to scribe it so I could pop it, and then glued it on there, just sanded the edges down a little bit, but made a perfect circle. So anyways, awesome tool. So can't say anything but good things about it. Little expensive. It was about 58 bucks if I remember right, and through Hobby Easy. Very cool tool. They keep making more stuff, so thumbs up to them. Thanks for watching, and now go build something.